The Mr. Bravo Show is brought to you by viewers like you.
Alright, that does it. You just can't seem to behave, even with all of these rigorous rules being put in place. Clearly, we need to have some more stricter rules and regulations in place to make sure that you stay in line. Alright, what gives? We've allowed you to do everything you want, and yet you are still misbehaving. Well, I guess we could let the leash a little bit looser. Either way, you need to learn to behave. Wait, your people are misbehaving too? Even though you allow them to participate in degeneracy, like expressing opinions and letting them dress how they want to? I'm not that shocked, since they have no structure. Well, your people don't seem to be doing much better. They seem to be in constant fear and can't express anything without being beaten. No wonder they're rebelling so hard. The rules and regulations give people the structure and order they need, and fear is a good motivator. Lack of rules and regulations allow people to be free and live the lives they want to, without the fear of persecution. Well, we clearly seem to be at an impasse. One of us makes the most sense. Let's take a look and see which one of our systems makes the most sense, shall we? Hello, Neutral Mr. Bravo here. Those other guys sure seem to be a bit passionate about their beliefs, but they're not really able to discuss the other person's belief very neutrally. That's why I am here, because I am enlightened, and I'm more of an empath than the others. Let's dive a little bit deeper into what each ideology brings to the table, shall we? Authoritarianism generally defines a country with a very strongly centralized government, with the executive branch having tight control over most facets of life. There are various sub-branches of authoritarianism, including colorful ideologies like fascism and communism, but we don't really have time to cover all of those. But maybe, if we have some people subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/The Mr. Bravo Show, we could see if there's enough interest. Anyway, most authoritarian regimes share common themes, including a president or prime minister with pretty much absolute power, a strong military and police force, captured institutions, corrupt news media, and consistent propaganda to let the citizens know how great their government is. Freedom of speech is generally either frowned upon or outright banned, with certain regimes killing those that speak out against the government. For as much fun as it sounds to live under one of these regimes, it may excite you to know that quite a lot of countries are considered rather authoritarian. As it turns out, most of the world is actually pretty authoritarian. Make of that what you will. On the other side of the coin, we have anarchy. Generally speaking, anarchy boils down to two words: no rules. The only rule that most anarchists will abide by is to not be a dick to those close to you, but the jury's still out on that one. Anarchy differs from the more mainstream position of liberalism in the sense that liberals, whether from the US or Europe, still believe in certain social structures, believe in some form of government, and generally like some form of regulations. But anarchists will literally piss all over the things listed above. Outside of the Chaz occupation in Seattle in 2020, very few countries have had any success with an anarchist model. This isn't by coincidence either. The whole point of anarchy is to not have a centralized government, or to have structures that control any facets of life. The individual, or the group, should be able to manage power on their own, without the need for complex rules, burdensome regulations, or a censorious government. At the end of the day, true freedom is the most important, right? So now that we know what authoritarianism and anarchy are, what is one policy that each ideology wants to present for an ideal society? The authoritarians propose the following policy for an ideal society: 3 strikes and you're out. This policy is pretty straightforward. You can go to prison as many times as you want, if that number is 3 times. The first time you go to prison, hey, it might be an honest mistake, you might not have known any better, you're young, etc. You'll be out of here in a few days, kiddo. The second time you're in prison, well, you should know better at this point. You're turning into a repeat offender, but we'll trust you not to be an idiot and release you again. If you manage to land in jail a 3rd time, let's just say your life will suddenly become considerably shorter than you anticipated. I know it may sound harsh, but think of it this way. How many repeat offenders are let onto the streets every day? how many people have been in and out of the prison system their entire lives and will never be able to live a life outside of consistent crime? How much money does it cost the taxpayer to house a huge amount of people in prison for such a long period of time? Most, if not all of those questions can be answered with a simple solution. Just get rid of the troublemakers. With the troublemakers out of the way, think about how much more peaceful society will be, only being filled with the good people, the true people, the people who obey the rule of law and won't let society slip any further. Interesting. But if the criminals are dealt with like that, would that also mean you would want to reduce the amount of prisons? Reduce prisons? What does that mean? Well, you know, having less prisons available. I mean, since there'd be less criminals, right? Okay, moving on to anarchy. What do you have to offer to the masses? The anarchists propose the following policy for an ideal society. All drugs are now legal. I know this might sound a bit out there, but let's be real for a second. Drugs are everywhere. Whether you live in a small village or massive metropolis, odds are you'll be able to find various flavors of illicit drugs pretty quickly. And those drugs that you do find are probably laced with something not very nice, might be fake, or might be something that isn't advertised. If all drugs are legal across the board, it would take the whole underground stigma away and would encourage dealers to be a bit more honest with what they sell. From a money point of view, dispensaries for everything would be open, and you could get whatever you want. Any drug under the rainbow can now be yours for a small price to pay. In terms of prison, with all drugs made legal, people could no longer get arrested for possession, freeing up valuable prison space for actual dangerous criminals, and allowing more people to experience the joys of true freedom. Now, I know it doesn't sound super attractive from the point of view of someone who does not use drugs, but think of it this way. You will always have the freedom to not partake in any drugs, and let's be honest, most of the drug users will be hanging out within their own circles anyway. With the stigma of drugs being reduced, I believe that most people who don't do drugs will find that they can live peacefully with other drug users, and everyone can live within balance. That sounds nice, but with all drugs legal, how would you go about getting counseling for drug addicts that want to get clean? Well, that would probably be funded by the sales taxes from the drugs being sold by the dispensaries. Taxes? Aren't you against a centralized apparatus that collects taxes? Okay, well, those are quite the proposals we have from you guys. I mean, unique ideas all around, interesting thoughts and whatnot. I have tallied the votes of our worldwide audience to see which system they prefer, based on your proposals. And the votes are now in. And the winner is... something less extreme. What? Well, I say. Let's dig a little bit deeper into the results and see why people voted the way they did. According to the audience, they agree with the authoritarians on needing to get a hang on the prison population, but disagree with their methods of getting the problem solved. They also like the idea of the anarchists to have drugs be less illegal, but worry about the realities of having visible, open drug use in their communities. It also says here they like to have some common rules and structures without having a government that is too overbearing, and that they like a free and open society with the assumption that people are able to control themselves and be good to their neighbors. Some pretty groundbreaking stuff. But that doesn't prove anything. Yeah, if anything, it proves that people are indecisive and don't know what they want. Well, going off the results, that's exactly right. Look, I find it frustrating too, but can you blame them? If people are confronted with extreme opinions, they will tend to gravitate towards something a little bit less extreme, or at the very least, look for the most sensible policies of an extreme platform. And of course, there will always be crazy people out there that will take things to the extreme, and those people are almost always going to be the loudest and lead public discourse, but that discourse is almost never reflective of society as a whole. An extremist society, however, actually does fit that description pretty well. When you think of authoritarian and anarchist societies, there is a surprising amount of lockstep between the leaders and their people. The big thing missing, though, is diversity of thought. If your society is too authoritarian, you will inevitably get rid of too many people asking tough questions, leading to a brain drain and a society propped up on the leaders' egos. If your society is too anarchist, there will be too much infighting on who gets to do what, and people forget that there are other things that need to be done. At the end of the day, people need to eat, want to have some form of upward mobility, live in a safe area, be able to have access to opportunities, and live a life in relative comfort. Historically, societies that have been able to achieve these goals have been the most successful, and more importantly, it's because they were able to have a balance between opinions and were able to work together to solve problems for the greater good. Unfortunately, looking around the modern world, most governments are constantly fighting with each other while dissolving the middle class and getting people angry with their neighbors about whether or not the Little Mermaid should be black while they are plundering the country's treasury. As long as the government remains of the people, by the people, and for the people, society will thrive for many years to come. But once that breaks down completely, an extreme pendulum will swing. Which one will it be? Authoritarianism, anarchy, or finding solutions?